Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into something truly fascinating, a literal architectural blueprint for a proposed new human civilization. We're going to be unpacking a text known as the Declaration of the Future of the Second Home. Now, this document is deeply rooted in the teachings and writings of the guide Shufeng, the founder of the intentional community known as Life Chen Yuan. It outlines a really radical reimagining of how humans can live, completely shifting away from materialism and toward this deeply intertwined, spiritually grounded existence. But before we get into the actual mechanics of this proposed society, there is a detail about this specific declaration that makes it incredibly unique. Check out this editor's note, this profoundly spiritual declaration, a text detailing the nuanced philosophical teachings of the guide Shufeng regarding the future of humanity, was synthesized completely by artificial intelligence. It wasn't tweaked or edited by human hands after it was generated. It's a pretty wild intersection, isn't it? You have the cold, calculated algorithms of AI somehow successfully capturing this warm, deeply human longing for a spiritual second home. It definitely sets the stage for a very unique exploration.
All right, so here is our roadmap. We'll be covering 1, the second home awakening, 2, the 3 reverences, 3, a life of simplicity, 4, Hundenic management explained, and finally, 5, lighthouse for the soul.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the Second Home Awakening.
You know, every proposed blueprint for a new society has to start with a critique of the old one. The text basically positions our current era as an age overflowing with material desire, yet fundamentally asleep in spirit. It describes a world torn by conflict and division, which, let's be honest, is something a lot of us can relate to feeling today when we just glance at the news. But instead of just hesitating in this divided old world, the Declaration advocates making a conscious choice to wake up. It proposes taking a decisive first step toward a future defined by harmony and unity. That step, that physical and spiritual destination, is what they call the second home. And it's presented not as some aggressive revolution, but as a peaceful, very intentional pivot away from the status quo.
Moving on to Section 2, the 3 reverences. Foundational beliefs.
These reverences, they essentially form the philosophical bedrock of Shufeng's teachings. The first pillar is reverence for life. And notice the emphasis on the word life there. The text explicitly states that every single life is a miracle of the universe. So it's not just about human life. It's this broad, all-encompassing respect for existence itself. According to this blueprint, life isn't just something you maintain. It is something intrinsically worthy of respect, meant to be actively cherished and fulfilled. That sets a baseline of absolute nonviolence and deep, deep empathy. Then we have the second pillar, reverence for nature. Actually, scratch that. It goes way beyond your standard modern environmentalism. The Declaration asserts that all things under heaven and earth actually possess a spirit. By aligning with the physical, natural world, you are inherently aligning with the spiritual world. The text makes a direct connection here. To follow nature is to follow the Tao, which it defines as the way of heaven. So the natural ecosystem isn't just a resource to be managed, it's a divine guide for living. Have you ever felt that profound sense of peace when you're just walking through a quiet forest? Well, this philosophy centers its entire societal structure on tapping into that exact feeling. And the third and final pillar is reverence for the gods. The text takes a very immanent view of the divine here, meaning it sees the presence of the gods living within all that exists. They're in the trees, the soil, and of course, in humanity itself. Because of that, the act of honoring the gods isn't about some distant, disconnected worship. It's a highly reflective practice. Honoring the divine in the universe is exactly how residents of the second home honor the divine spirit within themselves. Section 3, a life of simplicity, returning to truth. So how do those 3 reverences actually translate into daily living? The crucial point is understanding what is actively discarded and what replaces it. The community deliberately leaves behind the endless chase for fame, fortune, and this heavy reliance on power. Think about how much of our daily stress comes from those exact pursuits. They even leave behind the fear of solitude, claiming that by connecting at a soul level, loneliness is just eradicated. In place of all those worldly pursuits, they embrace radical simplicity, truth, a strict reliance on conscience, and deep cooperation. It's essentially a total reset of societal incentives. Now, this kind of reset requires a highly intentional lifestyle. The source text describes a community where people live together, eat together, cultivate the land together, and raise the young together. It is an intensely communal structure. But the text is also careful to note that this isn't just some dry, functional arrangement. This collective living is supposed to be rooted in love, shaped by beauty, and constantly guided by the Tao. Everything is shared, which fundamentally just removes the friction of personal resource accumulation. Section 4. Hundunetic Management Explained. Formless yet orderly. Okay, so if everyone lives in such tight-knit quarters, sharing absolutely everything, how do they keep order? This brings us to one of the most paradoxical and fascinating concepts in Shui Feng's blueprint: Hundunic management. It literally means there is zero hierarchy, no one worships authority, and there are absolutely no imposed commands. It is described as formless yet orderly and leaderless yet self-disciplined. How does that even work? Well, the text claims that because of their shared spiritual foundation, those three reverences we talked about, every single person acts as both a master of their own destiny and a guardian of the community. It relies 100% on internal conscience rather than external police or managers. Finally, Section 5, Lighthouse for the Soul, Creating the Future. We've looked at the philosophy and the daily mechanics, but what is the ultimate mission of this community? It'd be super easy to look at an intentional, remote group and just label it as escapism, right? But the declaration directly addresses this. The text states, we are not escaping reality, but creating the future. We are not opposing the old world, but giving birth to a new civilization. They frame their existence as a highly proactive mission. They aspire to be a lighthouse, keeping watch in the darkness and sowing the seeds of a better way of life before the dawn of a broader human awakening. Their vision for humanity at large is beautifully distilled right here into these core elements. A world entirely devoid of war, exploitation, and deceit. A world that runs instead on absolute freedom, unwavering trust, and deep spirituality. They envision a reality where human hearts actually commune with the gods, and where humankind and nature live in absolute, unbreakable harmony. To reach that ambitious horizon, the text outlines a steadfast commitment. Using this really powerful maritime metaphor, they pledge to use wisdom as their vessel to stay afloat in challenging times. They use compassion as their sail to catch the wind and drive them forward. And they use truth as their unyielding direction. The source material emphasizes a fierce dedication here, stating that even if literally only one person remains, they are committed to guarding this pure land of the soul. Now, as we reach the epilogue of the text, it issues a striking clarification. It states plainly, the second home is not a utopia. The word utopia literally translates to no place, an impossible fictional perfection. Instead, the text argues that this is the real, tangible call from the depths of the human spirit. It is framed not as an ending point where history just stops, but as the very beginning of a much-needed rebirth for human civilization. Which brings us to our final thought, and a question for you to ponder, based on everything we've explored from the guide Shui Feng's teachings today. We've seen the blueprint, from the three reverences all the way down to Hundudic management. Is this vision of the second home merely a utopian dream, cooked up in an AI prompt destined to just remain on paper? Or could this formless, self-disciplined reverence for life actually represent the blueprint for civilization's rebirth? It's a profound question about human nature, and one that certainly leaves us with a whole lot to think about. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.